My guest today is Brenda Elsagher. Brenda began her career when she embraced 40 with gusto, and that set her on her path to comedy, writing, and speaking. And she found a message using humor that resonates with every audience she meets. She's spoken to leaders of 8 and to crowds of thousands, and every size in between. Her content is rich in the science of humor and how the way it's used can benefit both the workplace and daily life. An entrepreneur for over 20 years, her skills as a small business owner sharpened her sense of humor, which created an atmosphere that was fun and dynamic for both clients and staff. So, Brenda, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, you started this career of comedy and writing and speaking in your 40s. So
Right.
what on earth got you to go in that direction? There had to be something that happened to you where you said, aha, this is what I need to do.
Well, I can see you're not a doctor for no reason. You figured it out. Something did happen. I did own hair salons at the time, and I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And I think I had just a pain in my tush, and I went to the doctor thinking it was probably hemorrhoid pain. It turned out to be more serious than that. And after some life-changing operations and time away from work for a few months, I kind of had time to think about what's really important. My kids were 3 and 5 at the time, and even though my business was really booming and it was really great, if this is it, is there something I haven't done? And two things came to mind. One was to be a stand-up comedian. Always enjoyed stand-up comedy, but never felt I was smart enough or politically savvy enough or pretty enough or whatever we do with our enoughs. I was none of those. And then I also thought I never went to college because I was very practically minded. And when I finished high school, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. I wasn't sure what direction. I kind of fell into hairdressing. It was nothing I ever thought of, but someone offered me free school, so I ended up being a hairdresser. And it turned out to be a really good fit for me. But there was still a lot left to explore, and so I decided stand-up comedy first, college second. So I learned how to do comedy and actually ended my comedy, it was a comedy class that ended right around the time of my 40th birthday. And so then I invited a lot of people to the party, and that was going to be the end of it because you're so busy with your kids and your business. And then one of my friends said, well, you should try out for the Twin Cities Funniest Person contest because it was really built around people that had never been paid to do comedy trying out. There were 150 contestants, and I was lucky enough to have won the whole thing. So I got $1,000 with that contest, and I told my husband I'd split it with him, so I gave him $50. Female calculations, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's really been a blessing just to follow my desires and
I would think you would have tons of material just from clients, because clients in hair salons tell their hairdressers everything. And so even though you'd have to change the name and the the circumstances, you probably had a lot of good material to start with. But you also... Yeah?
Go ahead.
No, I was
going to say that's usually true, and you hear a lot about that. And I think we were just so busy. I would do 4 or 5 clients at a time, so they didn't really have time to get into the nitty-gritty of their lives. But we did. It would be that special client at the end of the night that would give you some good stuff. But most of the material, I really stuck with my husband. My husband's from Egypt originally. He's Muslim. I'm from Minnesota, German, Catholic. We call our children Muslims, So it's just like a blending of everything, and I have constant material, even 27 years into our marriage now. Still feeds me with some good material from time to time.
Wow, that's great. Well, you also, though, didn't go to college until you were almost 42. So
yeah, 42.
So what made you go back to school?
My kids were growing up, and I felt like I was missing what is college all about. Not only what do you want to train yourself to do or to be or explore. I loved learning. It wasn't that I wasn't learning. I tried to learn 5 languages. I'd traveled around the world prior to college, so I had kind of a world view and a world learning, but not the, jumping the hoops that you need to for all the degrees that you have. And my aunt was in college, and she was 84. She was a freshman. I thought, oh my gosh, no, she wasn't 84 at the time. She was 74 at the time. And I thought I want to be able to do that. And so I just thought I've got to do it. If I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? And it was great for me to learn about curriculum and learn about credits and learn how many hoops you have to do to get something, achieve something. Even though at that point I'd already achieved owning a business for, gosh, it was 20 years at that time. So I was used to hard work, and I was fascinated by the learning. And I took the hard thing. I took the hardest thing first. I had to take algebra, and that was just awful. And I remember pounding on the table, frustrated with my algebra because I would get it when the teacher was saying it, and then I wouldn't get it afterwards. And my son said to his sister, "We're not going to be old like Mom when we go to college. We got to do it right away, so we're not too old." And so at least I inspired them. But I haven't finished my degree. My aunt is now 88, and she's a sophomore. So maybe I'll do the same thing she's doing.
Well, it's funny because it's true. I mean, all the things that you're saying are very true, and that's the point. It's never too late, and you can always go back and do something that you wanted to do before. Maybe not in the same way, shape, or form, but you can do it. And
oh yeah, I didn't know I was a writer until I took a writing class, and then I found out I was a writer. So how long would that one have been buried? My first book came out of my college class. And so
yeah, you said the title was "If the Battle Is Over, Why Am I Still in Uniform?"
Right, right.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you. All my book titles are pretty funny because it's all based around humor.
Well, now so your diagnosis of cancer, though, I mean, that had to hit you like a ton of bricks because you were young then. Your kids were young, correct?
Yeah, I was 39, and my kids are 3 and 5, and we'd only been married 6 years, and now I'm in the doctor's, and he's telling me I'm going to have a permanent colostomy, so I have to have my rectum removed and reconstruction, all my female parts, and hysterectomy, and I knew my life was changing at that point. And but I remember saying to him, you do whatever you have to do because I want to dance at my children's weddings. And I have to tell you, Dr. Gale, when I just danced at my son's wedding in June, it had a whole other thrill for me than it probably would for most mothers of the sons. But just to be able to be at his wedding and dancing, it was a dream come true. And so I felt quite grateful about that. And I did end up with a permanent colostomy. And the only thing that bothered me about that is you can't find shoes to match your bag. Actually, you can. They just look like crap. But anyway, so I try to make humor out of that. My clients
well, even
were great.
Your book is "I'd Like to Buy a Bowel."
Yeah, my book is "I'd Like to Buy a Bowel, Please," and that's that was a book that came out of looking at having an ostomy as positive experience and something funny. And so I went to the National Ostomy Convention and interviewed people, and we came up with about 80 stories that were funny for that book. And then the next one was called Bedpan Banter, which really was about how we couldn't deal with our medical issues without the great works of doctors and nurses. So I got some stories from doctors and nurses and patients in that book. And then the fourth book was called It's in the Bag and Under the Covers. And that deals with the taboo subject of sex and dating and intimacy when one has a ileostomy or a colostomy or a urostomy. All these things they probably weren't born with, and yet they have to struggle with and try to figure out how to deal with life. So my fifth book is now approaching another stigma. I found that, the ostomy world, when I was 39, people didn't talk about bowels and butts. We were just getting used to breast cancer and talking about that. So I had a mission early on to just educate people on the importance of getting a colonoscopy. And if you're age 50 or over and you haven't had one, just go treat yourself. It's the best test to be over with, and it can prevent having to have an ostomy. It can save your life by having a simple procedure of a colonoscopy. So please do go do that. But I realized people weren't that comfortable talking about that. Now these days you see commercials about it, you see billboards on it. So I feel like my job is getting done. And now I'm tackling aging. People just hate the idea of aging, and I know you talk about this quite a bit. But for a cancer survivor or a person who survived chronic illnesses of any kind, what we want to do is age. Even at age 39, I was thinking, I want to age, and so my dream is coming true. I'm aging, and I'm still embracing it. I'm grateful for it. I'm still finding out things about myself that are new and adventurous, and I'm not letting any grass grow beneath my feet just yet.
Well,
Free
you've
fun.
said a couple of things that are key. Number one, I'm a three-time breast cancer survivor, and I've
Yeah.
had 16 surgeries. And when I first, well, I was 49 with my first case of breast cancer, and it was not talked about then either. As a matter of
Right.
fact, I couldn't tell anybody because if I did, they wouldn't hire me as a speaker, because maybe I wouldn't show up. And
Yeah.
but I did do PSAs. I did public service announcements
Mhm.
to make sure that people were aware. And at that time, they did trace 250 women who went and got mammograms because of me. So I was
What
very
a great
happy about
feeling.
that.
That's
However,
fantastic.
However, it's so true. I do get my colonoscopies, and I was told the last time I didn't have to come back till I was 81, so that's a few years now to go. But I am a firm believer in prevention, and that's one of the things that I always say to everybody: just don't put it off. Make sure whatever it is, whether it's checking your skin for skin cancer, the colonoscopy, your mammograms, your whatever. Get your flu shot, get your pneumonia shot. And as a matter of fact, I even got a oh dear, now it's out of my mind. The shot where you get from chickenpox. You
Shingles.
get your
Yeah, for
spring
shingles
shingles, and
prevention.
I got my
Mhm.
shingle shot, and I did
Mhm.
get a case of shingles, but it was
Wow.
so mild that I thought I was in a hotel when it came out, and I thought I had been bitten by bed bugs. And I went down to the
Wow.
front desk, and I accused them of. I said, are you sure you don't have bed bugs?" And they came up and they stripped the bed and they went through the room, and they said nothing is there. And then I figured it out, as I looked at it and as it was growing, and it was in this one area, but it was just itchy. It wasn't like painful. And so I went to the computer and I looked it up. I thought, my gosh, I've got shingles. Well, I can tell you in 1 week, of course, I went on Benadryl and I put calamine lotion on it, but in 1 week, it was gone. It had formed the scabs and it wasn't bad at all, but it was because I had had the shingle shot. It just took
Well,
it
that is a
away.
great testimony.
It is.
Yes,
And
that's
so,
fabulous.
what you and I are both saying, Brenda, is that just get checked for everything because you don't know when it's going to come into to play for you. But I want to ask
Oh,
you a
that's so
question.
true.
Uh, are there moments in a serious health crisis when humor is not appropriate or can be counterproductive? How do you handle that?
I think in the spirit of which it's done, I think people have to use their intuition and see when either the patient is teasing or the patient's husband is teasing, then it seems appropriate. I think you've got to get some good intuition about it. Uh, even in the worst case scenario, remember the scene from Patch Adams when Robin Williams, who's playing Patch Adams, goes in to talk to a man who's been mean to everybody. He's mean to his family. He's mean to his nurses because he's gotten a terminal diagnosis of cancer, and he won't communicate, and he's belligerent. And Patch Adams hears about this and dresses up like an angel with the wings and the whole bit, and walks into his room and just starts saying things like "kick the bucket," "worm buffet," "end of the road," and starts saying the worst things about dying to this man, who's going to call for the nurse, and then all of a sudden the man starts bantering back to him, some more of these expressions, and I think it was intuition that told him go talk to him, help him face this. So there has been a lot of humor during the very difficult times too, and for some reason, innately in me, a sarcastic voice came out inside me that helped me deal with the fact that so many people looked at my butt, and I had a really big butt at the time. I mean, it was outstanding. If I was standing in the kitchen, my butt was outstanding in the living room. And I had 10 different doctors and 10 different vaginal and rectal exams within 3 weeks. And you just have to develop kind of an inner voice that's accepting this. And so I would find often, I would say, come on in, I'll charge a quarter, all this different stuff for myself. But for other people, I think they get clues from the patient, if it's okay. And some people just know it's time to take the risk, even with a stranger. They get an indication that this might be right.
Well,
Most of the time it works out.
Well, you mentioned your book, Bedtime Banter. It's in the
Hmm.
bag and under the covers, and you said it deals with a person with an ostomy or a caregiver dealing with issues of sex, intimacy, and caregiving.
Right.
And is there one particular story that stood out for you with this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was one in particular